Thanks very much, and thanks for joining us here today. I just wanted to join together the comment you made about your hometown and the cost of its demise, and some of the other points you've been making in your writing about how to actually measure the social and economic costs of these huge changes. So in Australia, just today, it's the first anniversary of a huge reform we put in place, the new National Disability Insurance Scheme, a new system of insurance to cover people with severe disabilities over their lifetimes. And when we had the Productivity Commission do the inquiry into how this scheme should work, they did some analysis for us of the economic benefits of such an insurance approach. But what we've always found very difficult to measure, and particularly difficult to get agreement about with traditional economic thinking, maybe if I could put it that way, is how to actually demonstrate the social and economic benefit of such investments. I think we've failed for the sort of town or city that you came from, but we also are unable to describe the benefit to society other than in the broadest terms. And so the current neoliberal approach is, well, this is going to cost us $14 billion. That's a cost to society. And we don't have a very effective way of coming back and saying, well, these, in fact, are the economic benefits. What would be your advice about how to better pursue that argument?
Okay, so part of the way I would begin the discussion is to first note that GDP is not a good measure of economic performance. And there's, and this is now well accepted. I chaired this International Commission on the Measurement of Economic Performance and Social Progress. We have a report called Mismeasuring Our Lives, Why GDP Doesn't Add Up. And there was unanimity that GDP, not only GDP was not a good measure, but what were the things that were wrong, setting a research agenda. That's now been taken up by the OECD. And there's now a high-level expert group, which I chair, that is trying to push this agenda further. If we could get more financial support, we'd be able to do it more. But there are many aspects of why GDP is not a good measure. It doesn't measure what happens to resource depletion. If your growth is based on taking wealth away from under the ground and you don't reinvest it above the ground, you're poor. So it doesn't measure economic sustainability. It doesn't measure, it doesn't, so there are lots of things that are not incorporated. One thing that it doesn't measure that is very important is security. And lots of studies illustrate how important security is. At the World Bank, we did a study when I was chief economist on the voices of the poor, where we talked about what was it that made people suffer the most of being at the bottom. And obviously, lack of income was important, but so was insecurity and lack of voice. Those were the three things that kept coming up. We interviewed 10,000 people, kept coming up over and over again. Now, the good thing is that's one aspect that we know how to quantify well. We know how to quantify the cost of insecurity. And so one of the things that we're trying to do, part of the agenda going forward, is to include measures of insecurity as a real economic benefit. I mean, after all, you think of the whole insurance industry, what is that whole industry about? It's a measure of the people are willing to spend lots of money to inefficient private insurance companies to get more security. So there's no doubt that people value security, We can actually quantify how much they value. The fact that when we provide it publicly, we don't incorporate that benefit in GDP is a mistake of our measurement system. It's not, if we don't measure it, doesn't mean it's not there. It's a real benefit. And I think we ought to be using, trying to move towards expanded metrics of well-being, which would include the value of security. And so, for instance, my view is when we try to privatize old age pension in the United States, to leave people on the dependent on the market, that was increasing insecurity, and that was a lowering of standards of living. And we were grateful that Bush failed. Had he succeeded, the crisis of 2009-8 would have been much worse because people's total retirement income would have been wiped out. And the number of people in poverty in the United States would have soared. Everybody over 65 would have been put into poverty if we had privatized Social Security in the way that Bush had wanted.